What's up, Magic players? It's Doyle, your host here on DoylePrimeMTG. Today I'd like to show you how I turn my Urza Lord High Artificer into something that I'll actually play more than 3 times.
Forests, islands, mountains, plains, and swamps. The multiverse is all that is, or ever was, or ever will be. There is a tingling in the spine, a faint sensation, as if a distant memory of walking from plane to plane. Our lives have been forever changed, as if by magic. Embark with me on this journey to eternity. Experience the true power of mind over matter, as we ignite your spark and traverse into the magic multiverse.
I've played Urza. It is kind of fun. It's also pretty boring. Since I enjoy aristocrats, I decided to take this Dimir with Silas Wren, Seeker Adept, and Keskit the Flesh Sculptor. Seeing as this is a rebuild of my Urza deck, I will not necessarily be worried about budget for this video. Silas Wren costs 1 blue-black for a 2/2 human artifact creature with Death Touch that lets us recall an artifact from our graveyard to our hand whenever he deals combat damage to an opponent. This will help keep our hand full of small artifact cards for repeated sacrifice with our other commander. Keskit the Flesh Sculptor costs 2 and a black for a 1/3 human artificer with tap, sacrifice 3 other artifacts and or creatures, and look at the top 3 cards of our library. Put 2 of them into our hand and the other into our graveyard. Our goal is to take tiny, almost unplayable artifacts and cycle them in and out of the graveyard to churn through our deck to find a win con. First things first, let's ramp it up. We're going to start things off with our Evergreen Artifact ramp with Mana Crypt, Soul Ring, Arcane Signet, Dimir Signet, Felwar Stone, and Wayfarer's Bauble. Plague Mirror costs 2 and taps for a colorless, but also has Infect to open up the possibility for a poison kill.
Sad Robot
Lets us tutor a basic land into play tapped, and draws us a card when it dies. Burnished Heart is going to let us ramp 2 basic lands into play. Gilded Lotus costs 5, but taps for 3 of any one color. Urza, Lord High Artificer, makes for an excellent competitive commander, but in this deck I use him simply to produce massive amounts of mana, since he can tap our untapped artifacts to produce blue mana. A couple cards that produce a similar effect are Inspired Statuary and Chief Engineer. These each allow us to tap additional permanents to help us cast our spells. Next we will include some things that make our artifacts cost less to cast, and often can make most of our artifacts free to cast, with Helm of Awakening, Ethereum Sculptor, Foundry Inspector, and Joyrus Familiar. We will also include Pitiless Plunderer to give us a treasure token each time a creature we control dies, and Mycosynth Wellspring, which tutors a basic land to our hand when it enters the battlefield or is put into a graveyard from the battlefield. Just to pat myself on the back, that's 17 ramp cards, and 15 of which are able to be abused by both of our commanders. Next up, let's keep up with the rest of the table in our card draw section. First up is a Skull Clamp, which lets us equip and sack our artifact creature tokens to draw 2 cards when they die. Ichor Wellspring costs 2 and draws us a card when it enters the battlefield or is put in the graveyard from a battlefield. Sage of Latnam is a creature that lets us tap and sacrifice an artifact to draw a card. Vidalcan Archmage lets us draw a card each time we cast an artifact spell. Shimmer Dragon lets us tap 2 untapped artifacts we control to draw a card. Mystic Forge takes card draw a step ahead by letting us cast colorless and artifact spells from the top of our library. Since Keskit is going to do so much of the card draw work, let's look at some cards that will help us generate token artifacts with Tezzeret Artifact Master and Psi Master Thopterist. Tezzeret can draw us a couple cards or create a Thopter each turn, while Psi passively creates Thopters we can sack with Keskit, but it also lets us pay 1 and a blue and sacrifice 2 artifacts to draw a card. Next up, we have some more cards that generate multiple artifacts each turn. I've included them in the card draw section, mostly because they will fuel Keskit's ability, drawing us multiple cards per turn. Genesis Chamber is going to allow us to generate 1/1 Mirror Artifact creature tokens whenever a non-token creature enters our battlefield. Efficient Construction and Mirrodin Besieged both generate Thopters when we cast artifact spells, and Mirrodin Besieged even has an alternate win con. Sharding Sphinx creates a Thopter whenever an artifact creature we control deals combat damage to a player, and it is also itself a flying artifact creature. Hangerback Walker costs XX for a creature that enters with X counters on it, but it generates Thopters when it dies equal to the number of counters that it had. Now we enter into the control section. Let us begin with cards that control our side of the table. First up, Expedition Map will allow us to tutor specific lands to our hand. Sensei Divining Top grants us untold card selection and combos with Mystic Forge. Key to the City not only helps Silas get through, but it also generates some card selection as it functions. Ugin's Nexus will block our opponent's extra turns and give us an extra turn when we're done using it. Mirage Mirror is one of the most versatile cards in all of Magic the Gathering. Since it is an artifact, I thought it silly not to include this gem. Sculpting Steel enters the battlefield as a copy of any artifact we control. Contraband Kingpin lets us scry whenever an artifact enters our battlefield. Next, we have some creatures that will let us return artifacts from our graveyard to our hand, and also combo pretty well with Kesket. Mirror Retriever, Junk Diver, and Workshop Assistant each let us return another artifact card from our graveyard to our hand whenever they die. And Scrap Trawler takes this one step further by letting us do the same whenever it or another artifact is put into our graveyard from the battlefield, but it limits this action by CMC. All 4 of these on the field with Kesket and some cost-reducing permanents mean that we can create a nice little value loop. Syndicate Trafficker is a nice little creature that has a sack outlet that helps protect itself while it grows in size. Emery Lurker of the Loch mills us 4 cards when it enters the battlefield and helps us cast artifact spells from our graveyard. Shimmermere lets us cast artifact spells as though they had flash. Phyrexian Metamorph enters as a copy of any artifact or creature on the battlefield. Kuldotha Forgemaster lets us sack 3 artifacts to tutor an artifact to the battlefield. Darksteel Forge lets us protect our artifacts by making them indestructible. Academy Ruins and Volrath Stronghold each help return permanents from our graveyard to the top of our library. Teleria West lets us transmute it to tutor any card with CMC equal to 0 to our hand. Next, we have 4 board wipes to affect the entire board, with Cyclonic Rift, Damnation, Toxic Deluge, and Phyrexian Scriptures. Now we peer into the dark side of control, manipulating the opposing side of the table. First, we have some graveyard hate with Nile Spellbomb, Soul Guide Lantern, and Bajuka Bog. It's always nice being the only player at the table having access to the graveyard. Next, Viridian Longbow will allow Silas to turn into a tap-dancing death machine, pinging creatures for 1 damage with Death Touch. Finally, Spine of Ish-Sa lets us destroy target permanent when it enters the battlefield, and it returns itself to our hand when it's put into the graveyard from the battlefield. Now it's time to finish them. These last few cards send us over the edge into victory. Disciple of the Vault and Marionette Master each damage our opponents when our artifacts die. Tezzeret, Master of the Bridge, deals damage to each opponent for each artifact that we control. Time Sieve allows us to sacrifice 5 artifacts to gain an extra turn. Mechanized Production gives us an alternate win con to surprise our opponents. Cranioplating can give one of our unblocked creatures +1/+0 for each artifact that we control, and it can equip normally for 1, but it also can equip at instant speed for black. For lands, we're going to include some Urza lands for flavor. Urza's Tower, Urza's Mine, and Urza's Power Plant can jointly produce 7 colorless mana. Shrine of the Forsaken Gods can tap for 2 colorless if we're casting colorless spells. 3 artifact lands increase our artifact count with Darksteel Citadel, Seed of the Synod, and Vault of Whispers. Finally, we have a suite of Dimir fixing lands with Clearwater Murkwater Pathway, Command Tower, Drowned Catacomb, Fetid Pools, Morphic Pool, Polluted Delta, Spire of Industry, Sunken Hollow, Sunken Ruins, Tainted Isle, Underground River, Underground Sea, and Watery Grave. Remember, proxies are your friends, especially land proxies. And always, when possible, support your local game store. That about wraps it up for this deck tech. I hope you enjoyed the video. You'll find the link to the full deck list on architect.com in the description, complete with a maybe board. Let me know in the comments below if you would take this deck in a different direction, or if there are any key includes that I missed. Cheers, and happy casting. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to hit that like button, and also share it with your friends. If you want to see more videos like these, or hear me ramble about how to navigate this Magic multiverse, go ahead and click that subscribe button to stay up to date on the latest from me, Doyle Prime, and the happenings throughout Magic the Gathering. Thank y'all for watching, and I'll see you all next video.